My daughter Ursula, William's daughter. Felicia's voice cut through the Savannah estate, her words a thunderclap shattering Ursula Harper's cruel facade. 3 years after betrayal tore her from William, Felicia stands defiant, her ebony skin radiant in a white gown, her daughter Zoe, William's spitting image, at her side. Ursula's invitation to William's engagement was meant to humiliate, but Felicia's truth threatens to unravel a web of lies. Dear listeners, what will Felicia's courage unleash? Will justice prevail, or will heartbreak reign? Join us. Where are you tuning in from? And what's your guess for this tale's twist? Subscribe now to catch our latest stories, and don't miss a word of this reckoning. Comment below. What secrets do you think Ursula hides? Share this journey to keep the truth alive. Let's uncover if Felicia's stand rewrites her story. Stay tuned. The Atlanta dusk pressed against Felicia Grant's apartment window, its amber glow pooling on the worn kitchen counter where an embossed envelope lay like a coiled snake. The gold foil of the Harper family crest gleamed, a cruel mockery of elegance that made Felicia's stomach churn. At 29, her ebony skin shimmered under the flicker of a single bulb. Her tight curls swept into a high bun that crowned her like a warrior queen. But her hazel eyes, sharp and soulful, betrayed a storm, rage, grief, and a flicker of defiance that refused to die. 3 years ago, her world had shattered. William Harper, her husband, with his sandy hair and green eyes that once held her heart, had believed his mother Ursula's venomous lies. Forged texts, a stranger paid to linger too close. Ursula's scheme painted Felicia as unfaithful, and William, blindsided, cast her out. Pregnant and alone, she'd clawed her way back, birthing and raising Zoe, her 4-year-old daughter, whose green eyes and light brown curls were a daily echo of the love she'd lost. Now this envelope, heavy with malice, bore an invitation to William's engagement to Lillian Prescott, a white heiress set in Savannah's grandest estate. Felicia's fingers, calloused from years of fighting for Zoe, traced the sharp edges, hesitating. The paper wasn't just an invitation. It was a weapon designed to humiliate. Tucked inside was a note in Ursula's precise, venomous script. Felicia, William has found his true match. Come see what you'll never be. Each word was a blade, slicing open scars 3 years old. Ursula Harper, with her icy smile and old money arrogance, had always despised Felicia, a black woman from a working-class family daring to love her pedigreed son. 3 years ago, Felicia had believed in forever. She'd met William at a community legal clinic, her fire for justice catching his eye. He was a rising lawyer, all charm and quiet rebellion, his green eyes seeing her, truly seeing her. Their love was a defiance of Ursula's world, sealed in whispered promises and late-night dreams of a family. But when Felicia's pregnancy test showed 2 lines, Ursula's disdain turned lethal. A stranger's staged embrace, doctored messages, Ursula's lies convinced William of betrayal. He'd stood in their cramped apartment, his voice cold as winter. How could you? Felicia's pleas, her tears, her truth drowned in Ursula's triumph. Divorced, discarded, she'd fled Atlanta, Zoe born in a hospital far from the Harper name. Now this invitation was a public flogging dressed as courtesy, a taunt to drag her back to Savannah's elite to be mocked. Felicia's pulse thrummed, rage coiling tight, but beneath it, a quieter pain pulsed. William was moving on, building a life with another while she carried their past alone. She glanced at Zoe, sprawled on the rug, her small hands stacking wooden blocks into a wobbly tower. Zoe's laughter, bright and unburdened, was a lifeline, but her green eyes, so like William's, stirred a pang in Felicia's chest. Mommy, what's that letter? Zoe's voice, curious and clear, cut through the haze. The girl tilted her head, her curls bouncing, her gaze too knowing for a child. Felicia forced a smile, tucking the envelope beneath a stack of bills. Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart, she said, her voice softer than the ache it hid. Zoe grinned, returning to her blocks, but her glance lingered, as if sensing the weight her mother carried. Felicia couldn't delay any longer. With a breath that felt like surrender, she slid the invitation free. The words danced in cruel clarity. William Harper and Lillian Prescott request your presence at their engagement celebration. A date 2 weeks away, a venue dripping with Savannah's old money splendor. Felicia's grip tightened, crumpling the edge. Ursula wanted her to cower, to slink away, to let the Harper name erase her. But Felicia Grant didn't break. Not then, not now. She poured a glass of cheap wine, the kind that burned going down, and stared at the invitation, its words a dare. She could ignore it, keep her fragile peace, let Ursula script this final humiliation. But peace hadn't healed the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, hadn't erased the questions in Zoe's eyes when other children spoke of their fathers. No, she'd go to Savannah, not to beg or weep, but to stand tall, Zoe at her side, her daughter's existence, a truth Ursula couldn't bury. Felicia's mind churned with plans. She'd need a dress, something bold, a statement that screamed she wasn't invisible. A strapless white gown with a dramatic black bow, perhaps, to set her skin ablaze against Savannah's pastel elite. She'd call Monique, her best friend, a stylist whose sharp tongue and fierce loyalty would be her shield. And Judge Evelyn Brooks, her mentor from the legal clinic, whose name carried weight in Georgia's high society. Evelyn's presence would tilt the scales. Then there was Marcus Tate, the private investigator who owed her a favor. Years ago, Felicia had helped his cousin escape a toxic marriage, and he'd promised to repay her. She grabbed her phone, her fingers swift. "Marcus, it's Felicia. I need you to dig into someone. Ursula Harper, everything you can find." His voice crackled with curiosity. "You got it. Give me a week." She hung up, her pulse racing. Ursula had secrets. Felicia felt it in her bones. As the clock ticked past midnight, she stood, the invitation in her hand, no longer a threat, but a battle flag. She wouldn't just attend this engagement party. She'd turn Ursula's stage into her own. For 3 years, she'd carried the weight of lies. Now, with Zoe as her truth, she'd shatter the Harper facade. The Atlanta dawn filtered through her kitchen window, painting the crumpled invitation in hues of fire. Felicia sipped bitter coffee, her mind a war room. Ursula thought she could summon her to Savannah like a scorned ghost, a relic to be pitied. But Felicia Grant was no ghost. She was a reckoning, her daughter her strength, her courage her blade. The road to Savannah would be paved with her resolve, and whatever awaited, heartbreak or vindication, she'd face it head on, for Zoe, for herself. The invitation, now pinned to her heart, was no longer a summons. It was a declaration of war. The Atlanta boutique hummed with the rustle of silk and the sharp scent of ambition as Felicia Grant stood before a mirror, the strapless white gown with its dramatic black bow draped over her arm like a battle standard. The fabric, sleek and bold, promised to make her ebony skin blaze, a defiant contrast to Savannah's pastel elite. At 29, Felicia's hazel eyes burned with purpose, her tight curls pulled into a defiant bun that crowned her resolve. The engagement invitation from Ursula Harper, William's mother, still seared her mind, a cruel summons meant to humiliate her at William's betrothal to Lillian Prescott. But Felicia wasn't the broken woman Ursula had cast out 3 years ago. She was a mother, a warrior, and this gown was her armor, chosen to declare her unyielding presence. "You're gonna set that estate on fire," Monique declared, her silver dress already picked to complement Felicia's radiance. The stylist, Felicia's best friend, leaned close, her dark eyes glinting with mischief. "Ursula's gonna choke when she sees you." Felicia's lips twitched, a spark of defiance igniting. "That's the plan," she said, her voice low but steady, the knot in her chest loosening with Monique's fierce loyalty. The boutique's mirrors reflected a woman unbroken, her curves hugged by the gown's audacious design. She imagined Savannah's elite, their whispers sharp as knives, faltering as she walked in. Zoe at her side, her daughter's green eyes, William's eyes. A truth Ursula couldn't bury. Across the city, in a mansion of polished marble and whispered deals, Ursula Harper sipped chamomile tea, her smile as sharp as the diamonds glittering on her fingers. At 60, her champagne blonde hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her icy blue eyes calculating. She'd orchestrated William's engagement to Lillian Prescott with the precision of a chess master, but love was never the prize. Lillian, 27, poised and blonde, was the sole heir to Prescott Logistics, a $500 million empire built by her father Edward. The Harper estate, quietly hemorrhaging funds from years of lavish excess, needed a lifeline, and Lillian's wealth was it. Ursula had molded William into the perfect suitor, whispering of legacy and duty until he courted Lillian, believing it his choice. To Lillian, she played confidant, preying on the heiress's quiet insecurities. Her father's self-made roots made her a target of Savannah's old money snobbery. "William will anchor you," Ursula had cooed, her words velvet over steel. "He's your equal in this world." Lillian, trusting, saw love where Ursula saw a vault. The plan was ruthless in its simplicity. Marry William into the Prescott fortune, gain influence over the company, and siphon funds to restore the Harper glory. Inviting Felicia was a cruel flourish, a final twist of the knife to cement Lillian's place while crushing a past inconvenience. Ursula savored the thought of Felicia slinking into Savannah, broken and invisible, a relic to be pitied. But Felicia, oblivious to Ursula's greed, was forging her own arsenal. Back at the boutique, she paid for the gown, her fingers steady despite the storm within. She dialed Judge Evelyn Brooks, her mentor from the legal clinic, her voice cutting through the static of her nerves. "Evelyn, I need you at this engagement party. Your name carries weight. It'll remind them I'm not alone." Evelyn's warm chuckle crackled through, a sound like rolling thunder. "Amina, I'll clear my schedule. Let's give them a show." Felicia exhaled, bolstered. Evelyn, a black woman whose influence dwarfed Ursula's posturing, was a beacon of power, her presence certain to shift the room's gravity. The riskiest piece of her plan was Marcus Tate, the private investigator who owed her a favor. Felicia met him in a neon-lit diner, the air thick with grease and secrets. Marcus, his weathered face etched with years of unearthing truths, slid into the booth across from her. "Ursula Harper," Felicia said, pushing the invitation across the scarred table. "I need everything. Her secrets, her lies." Marcus, who owed Felicia for saving his cousin from an abusive marriage, nodded, his eyes sharp. "She's got skeletons. I'll find them. 1 week." His confidence sparked hope, but Felicia's gut churned. Ursula's cruelty ran deep. What else had she buried? The thought gnawed at her, a shadow she couldn't shake. She sipped burnt coffee, her mind racing with the weight of her gambit, exposing Zoe to William, to Ursula, to Savannah's elite risked emotional wounds. But her daughter deserved more than a father's absence, more than the lies that had stolen him. That night, Felicia knelt by Zoe's bed, the 4-year-old clutching a stuffed bunny, her light brown curls splayed across the pillow. The girl's green eyes, so like William's, were closed in sleep, her small chest rising and falling. Felicia's heart ached, the decision to bring Zoe to Savannah heavy with consequence. She'd shielded her daughter from William's abandonment, spinning tales of a faraway daddy who loved her. But Savannah meant facing him, facing Ursula, risking Zoe's heart against a truth that could wound. "We're going on a trip, baby," Felicia whispered, her voice trembling. "To meet someone special." Zoe stirred, mumbling, "Daddy?" The word pierced Felicia, but her resolve hardened. Zoe deserved a father, not a shadow. If William rejected her, Felicia would shield her daughter's heart as she always had. If he saw her, really saw her, Ursula's lies would crumble. Back in her kitchen, Felicia paced, sketching plans like a general before battle. The gown, Monique, Evelyn, Marcus, each a piece of her counterstrike. She imagined Ursula's face when she walked in, Zoe's hand in hers, her daughter's eyes a mirror of William's. The thought sent a thrill through her, fierce and alive. She poured another glass of wine, the cheap kind that burned, and stared at the invitation pinned to her fridge, its gold foil catching the light. This wasn't just about showing up. It was about rewriting the story Ursula had scripted. Felicia's dreams that night were restless, haunted by William's cold voice. "How could you?" She woke, sweat-soaked, vowing to erase that memory. The road to Savannah loomed, a battlefield draped in roses and lies. Ursula thought she'd scripted the ending, but Felicia was no longer the woman she'd broken. With Zoe as her strength and allies at her back, she'd turned this engagement into a reckoning, her truth the blade she'd wield with precision. The Savannah estate shimmered under a canopy of lanterns, their golden glow casting shadows across the manicured lawns, where Savannah's elite gathered in their couture armor. The air buzzed with the clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of gossip. But as Felicia Grant crossed the threshold, a hush rippled through the crowd. Her strapless white gown, its dramatic black bow a bold flourish, hugged her curves, her ebony skin radiant against the sea of pastel silks. At 29, Felicia's hazel eyes burned with unyielding resolve. Her tight curls swept into a regal bun. Beside her, Zoe, 4 years old, clutched her hand, her white dress with a matching black bow mirroring her mother's defiance. The girl's green eyes, William Harper's eyes, sparkled with curiosity, her light brown curls catching the light. Felicia's heart pounded, the weight of her gamble heavy, but Zoe's small hand anchored her. This was no longer Ursula's stage. It was hers. Monique, fierce in a silver gown that gleamed like a blade, leaned close, her voice a conspiratorial murmur. "You've got this, Queen. Walk in like you own them." Felicia's lips curved, a flicker of gratitude steadying her. Judge Evelyn Brooks, regal in emerald silk, stood at her side, her dark eyes scanning the crowd with quiet command. Evelyn's presence, a beacon of power in Georgia's high society, sent a ripple of unease through the guests. The crowd turned as one, their gazes sharp with curiosity and judgment. "Who's she?" a woman in pearls hissed, her fan snapping shut. "That girl, eyes," another muttered, her diamond earrings glinting as she leaned toward her companion, noting Zoe's unmistakable resemblance to William. Felicia felt the weight of their scrutiny, but she stood taller, her daughter's warmth fueling her courage. She was no longer the broken woman Ursula had banished 3 years ago. She was a mother, a warrior, and this was her moment. Ursula Harper stood at the entrance, her champagne gown pristine, her smile a thinly veiled blade. At 60, her blonde chignon was flawless, but her icy blue eyes narrowed as they landed on Felicia. "Felicia," she drawled, her voice dripping venom, "how audacious of you to come." Her gaze flicked to Zoe, registering the girl's pale skin, her green eyes, her curls, a mirror of William's features. The older woman's poise faltered, a flicker of panic betraying her. "And with a child," she added, her tone a challenge, daring Felicia to falter. Felicia met her gaze, her voice steady as steel, each word a thunderclap in the hushed grandeur. "My daughter, Ursula. William's daughter." The declaration landed like a lightning strike, and Ursula's facade cracked, her hands trembling as she clutched her pearl-encrusted purse. "Absurd," she scoffed, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her, and the crowd's whispers swelled, a tide of speculation rising. Before Ursula could weave another lie, William Harper appeared, his tuxedo tailored to perfection, his sandy hair swept back, his green eyes widening in shock. "Felicia," he croaked, his voice a raw wound. His gaze dropped to Zoe, and the world seemed to still. The girl, bold despite the tension, stepped forward, her small voice clear and piercing. "I'm Zoe. Are you my daddy?" The question hung fragile and devastating, silencing the crowd. Gas rippled through the guests, their murmurs now a roar of intrigue. William knelt, his hands shaking as he studied Zoe's face, her eyes a haunting echo of his own. "Zoe," he whispered, his voice breaking, his fingers hovering, unsure if he could touch her. He looked to Felicia, searching for answers in her steady gaze, his face a map of guilt and confusion. Felicia's heart thundered, but she held firm, the pain of 3 years sharpening her words. "I tried to tell you, William, 3 years ago, when your mother lied." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of truth long buried. "She said I betrayed you. I begged you to listen, but you chose her." The accusation was quiet, yet it cut deeper than any scream, and William flinched, his shoulders sagging under the weight of regret. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a scandal brewing, their eyes darting between Zoe's undeniable resemblance and Ursula's faltering composure. Ursula stepped forward, her voice shrill, clawing for control. "This is a stunt, a desperate attempt to ruin my son's day." But her words faltered, the crowd's attention fixed on Zoe, on Felicia's unyielding strength. Lillian Prescott emerged from the throng, her ivory gown flowing like a river, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. Confusion clouded her delicate features, her blue eyes darting from Zoe to Felicia, then to William, who still knelt, frozen. "William, what's happening?" she demanded, her poise fraying, her voice sharp with unease. "Who is she?" Ursula seized the moment, her tone venomous. "Lillian, darling, this is nonsense. Felicia's fabricating lies to sabotage your happiness." But the crowd wasn't hers anymore. Their gazes lingered on Zoe's green eyes, on Felicia's radiant defiance. Evelyn Brooks stepped closer, her presence a quiet command, her dark eyes locking onto Ursula. "Careful, Mrs. Harper," she said, her voice low but lethal. "Truth has a way of cutting through lies." Ursula's smile wavered, and Felicia felt a surge of triumph. The stage was shifting. Zoe tugged at Felicia's gown, her voice small but piercing. "Mommy, why is everyone staring?" Felicia knelt, her touch gentle, her voice soft. "Because you're special, my love. Don't be scared." She rose, meeting William's gaze, seeing the man she'd loved drowning in regret. The air crackled with unspoken questions. Would he believe her now? Could he face the truth? And Lillian, caught in the crossfire, what would she choose? Felicia's pulse raced as the moment teetered on a knife's edge. The crowd's scrutiny weighed heavily, but Felicia stood at the heart of the storm. Zoe, her anchor, her truth, the spark that would ignite whatever came next. Ursula's panic was palpable, her empire of lies trembling, and Felicia knew this was only the beginning. The Savannah estate pulsed with a raw electricity, the air thick with the weight of Felicia Grant's truth and the crowd's hungry whispers. Felicia stood unwavering, her strapless white gown with its black bow, a beacon amidst the chaos, her ebony skin glowing under the chandeliers. Zoe, her 4-year-old daughter, clung to her hand, the girl's green eyes, William Harper's eyes, sparking a fire that burned through the lies Ursula Harper had spun. At 29, Felicia's hazel eyes locked onto Ursula, whose champagne gown seemed to wilt, her icy composure fraying. The crowd, Savannah's elite in their silks and diamonds, leaned in, sensing blood in the water. Monique's fierce loyalty in her silver gown and Judge Evelyn Brooks's commanding presence in emerald silk bolstered Felicia. But it was Marcus Tate's arrival that shifted the battlefield. The private investigator stepped forward, his weathered face unyielding, a slim folder clutched in his hand like a guillotine blade. Felicia's pulse surged. She hadn't expected Marcus here, not now in the heart of Ursula's orchestrated triumph. "Mrs. Harper," Marcus said, his voice slicing through the murmurs, "this concerns you." The crowd stilled, their champagne flutes forgotten, as he handed the folder to William, whose trembling fingers opened it, revealing a stack of papers that promised ruin. Ursula's eyes darted to the folder, her hands clutching her pearl purse so tightly the knuckles whitened. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped, but her voice quavered, a crack in her polished armor. William's face paled as he scanned the documents, emails, bank records, grainy photos. "Mother," he said, his voice low and dangerous, each word heavy with betrayal. "Is this true?" He held up a printed email, dated 3 years ago, detailing payments to a man hired to pose as Felicia's lover, complete with staged photos that had shattered their marriage. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that echoed off the estate's gilded walls. Felicia's heart clenched, the pain of that betrayal flooding back, but she stood taller, Zoe's small hand grounding her. "You paid to frame me," she said, her voice steady, each word a dagger aimed at Ursula's heart. "You tore us apart." Ursula's hands fluttered, grasping for control, her icy blue eyes darting for an escape. "I was protecting you, William," she stammered, her tone pleading but hollow. "She wasn't right for you. Her background, her—" Evelyn cut her off, her voice like a gavel. "Her strength, you mean? Her love?" The judge's dark eyes pinned Ursula, who flinched as if struck, the crowd's murmurs turning to disdain. But the folder held more, and Marcus wasn't done. "Keep reading," he said, his tone grim, his gaze never leaving Ursula. William turned the page, his jaw tightening as he uncovered correspondence between Ursula and a shady financial advisor. The words laid bare her true motive, manipulating William's engagement to Lillian Prescott to access her $500 million Prescott logistics fortune. Lillian, standing frozen in her ivory gown, her blonde hair catching the chandelier's light, leaned closer, reading over William's shoulder. Her gasp was sharp, a wounded sound that silenced the room. "You used me," she demanded, whirling on Ursula, her blue eyes blazing with fury. "You made me believe William loved me," Ursula stammered, her poise dissolving. "I was securing our future, Lillian. You needed us." Lillian's voice shook, but her resolve was iron. "You befriended me, preyed on my insecurities, all to plunder my father's legacy." The crowd's whispers turned to murmurs of disgust, their allegiance shifting. Felicia watched, her heart twinging with unexpected empathy. Lillian, like her, was Ursula's pawn, her trust weaponized. William's voice broke the silence, raw with rage. "You destroyed my family for money, my daughter's mother, my daughter." He clutched the folder, his knuckles white, as Zoe looked up, her green eyes confused but clinging to Felicia's hand. Lillian turned to Felicia, her poise cracking, her voice soft but resolute. "I didn't know," she said, her eyes meeting Felicia's, "about you, about Zoe, about any of this. I thought William was free to love me, but this—" She gestured to the folder, her hand trembling. "This is betrayal." With deliberate grace, she slid her engagement ring off, its diamond glinting as she pressed it into William's palm. "I won't marry into a lie. My father's legacy deserves better." The crowd buzzed, some nodding in respect, others glaring at Ursula, whose face crumpled, her elegance dissolving into desperation. William dropped to his knees before Zoe, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his hands hovering, unsure if he could touch her. "I didn't know you existed." Zoe tilted her head, curious, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Are you sad, Daddy?" Felicia knelt, her touch gentle, her voice firm but not unkind. "She's your daughter, William, but she's mine first. Earn her trust." Evelyn stepped forward, her presence a beacon. "You owe Felicia more than apologies, William. That child is your spitting image, raised alone while your mother wove her web." Her words were a challenge, and William nodded, his green eyes locked on Felicia's, drowning in regret. Ursula's voice pierced through, shrill and frantic. "You're all fools! She's manipulating you!" But no one listened. The guests turned away, their respect now with Felicia's quiet strength and Lillian's bold exit. Marcus leaned close to Felicia, his whisper urgent. "There's more. Stay ready." Her heart pounded. What else could Ursula have hidden? The crowd's scrutiny weighed heavily, but Felicia stood at the center, Zoe's warmth her shield. The engagement party meant to crown Ursula's victory was unraveling, and Felicia's truth was the spark igniting the chaos. Lillian's discarded ring glinted on the floor, William's anguish hung like a storm cloud, and Ursula's panic was a living thing. The battle wasn't over, but Felicia felt the tide turning, her daughter's hand in hers, a promise of the reckoning still to come. The Savannah estate crackled with tension, its opulent chandeliers casting fractured light across a crowd teetering on the edge of scandal. Felicia Grant stood resolute, her strapless white gown with its dramatic black bow, a defiant beacon, her ebony skin glowing amidst the chaos. Her 4-year-old daughter Zoe clung to her hand, the girl's green eyes, William Harper's eyes, shimmering with innocent curiosity. At 29, Felicia's hazel eyes burned with unyielding strength, her presence anchoring the unraveling of Ursula Harper's meticulously crafted lies. The private investigator Marcus Tate's damning folder had already exposed Ursula's schemes, framing Felicia for infidelity 3 years ago, and manipulating William's engagement to Lillian Prescott for her $500 million fortune. But Marcus's whispered promise of more hung like a storm cloud, and Felicia braced for the next strike. The crowd, Savannah's elite in their silks and diamonds, sensed blood, their whispers a rising tide turning against Ursula, whose champagne gown hung limp, her poise eroded. Marcus stepped forward, his weathered face a mask of grim determination, gesturing to a man hovering at the crowd's edge. "Elliot Vance," he announced, his voice cutting through the charged silence. "Ursula Harper's former lawyer. He has something to say." Elliot, gray-haired and visibly uneasy, shuffled forward, his tailored suit ill-fitting his nervous demeanor. His eyes darted to Ursula, who froze, her hands clutching her pearl purse like a lifeline, her icy blue eyes wide with dread. Felicia's pulse quickened. Marcus hadn't warned her of this witness, but his instincts were sharp, and she trusted the blade he was about to wield. The guests leaned in, their champagne flutes abandoned, sensing another fracture in Ursula's crumbling facade. "Speak, Elliot," Marcus urged, his tone unyielding, his gaze pinning the lawyer like a predator. Elliot cleared his throat, his voice thin but clear, trembling under the weight of the truth. "I helped her," he stammered, glancing at Ursula, whose face paled to ash. "Mrs. Harper intercepted a letter from Edward Prescott to his daughter Lillian. It warned her about the Harper family's financial troubles and urged her to delay the engagement." Gasps rippled through the crowd, a sharp intake of breath that echoed off the estate's gilded walls. Lillian, poised at the edge of the gathering in her ivory gown, turned back, her blonde hair catching the light, her blue eyes blazing with disbelief. "My father," she whispered, her voice cracking, a wound laid bare. Elliot's confession spilled faster now, as if unburdening a long-held sin. "She made sure you never saw it, Miss Prescott. She wanted you bound to William before you could question her motives." Lillian advanced on Ursula, her gown trailing like a ghost, her voice rising with fury. "You stole my father's words," she demanded, her hands clenched, her poise shattered. "You kept me from his warning." Ursula's eyes widened, her voice shrill, clawing for control. "I was protecting my son's future." But Elliot wasn't finished, his words a relentless tide. "There's more," he said, his glance at Marcus heavy with dread. "She siphoned funds from the Prescott Harper charity, $200,000 funneled to offshore accounts to secure her estate once she had access to Prescott Logistics." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt, the crowd's murmurs erupting into outrage, their faces hardening against Ursula, who staggered, her elegance dissolving into desperation. Lillian's voice rose, a blade of betrayal. "You preyed on my family's legacy, used my father's trust to line your pockets." William, still kneeling near Zoe, stood, his green eyes blazing, his voice a low growl. "You stole from my daughter? From Lillian's family?" He turned to Elliot, his rage barely contained. "How could you help her?" Elliot shrank under the scrutiny, his voice barely audible. "She threatened my career. I had no choice." But the crowd's disdain drowned his excuses, their allegiance now with Felicia's quiet strength and Lillian's wounded fury. Felicia's chest tightened, her empathy for Lillian deepening. They were both pawns in Ursula's greed, their lives reshaped by her ambition. Zoe tugged at her gown, her voice small. "Mommy, why's everyone mad?" Felicia knelt, her touch gentle. "Because you're special, baby. Don't be scared." Ursula collapsed into a gilded chair, her sobs theatrical but hollow, her blonde chignon unraveling. "I did it for you, William," she cried, her voice breaking, but no one moved to comfort her. Her empire of lies lay in ruins, exposed by the truth Felicia had carried for 3 years. Lillian's gaze swept the room, landing on Felicia, a spark of kinship igniting. "I'm done," she declared, her voice steady despite her trembling frame. "This engagement is over. I won't be part of the Harper's deceit." She strode toward the exit, her gown sweeping the floor like a battle flag, the crowd parting in awe. Felicia's heart swelled. Lillian's strength mirrored her own, a woman reclaiming her power. William turned to Felicia, his face a storm of anguish and resolve. "I didn't know," he whispered, his hands hovering near Zoe, who watched him warily. "I failed you both." Felicia's throat tightened, his sincerity clashing with her scars. "She's your daughter," she said, firm but not cruel. "But trust is earned, William. Start with her." Evelyn stepped closer, her voice a steady anchor. "Those are your eyes in that child, William. You owe Felicia a debt no apology can pay. The crowd's scrutiny weighed heavily, but Ursula's voice pierced through, venomous despite her tears. You're all fools. She's manipulating you. Her words fell flat, the guests turning away, their respect now with Felicia and Lillian. The engagement party meant to crown Ursula's victory had become her undoing. Felicia stood at its heart, Zoe's hand in hers, the truth a blade that had carved deep. Lillian's departure echoed. William's regret hung heavy, and the crowd's shifting allegiance swirled like a storm. Felicia felt the tide turn, her daughter's warmth her guiding light in the chaos, but Marcus's warning lingered. More secrets loomed, a shadow yet to break. The Savannah Cafe hummed with the clatter of porcelain and the soft murmur of morning conversations, its wooden tables bathed in golden streaks of late-morning sun. Felicia Grant sat by a window, her white blouse and jeans a stark contrast to the audacious gown she'd worn at the Harper engagement party the night before. At 29, her ebony skin caught the light, her tight curls loose around her shoulders, but her hazel eyes carried a new weight, blend of triumph and lingering scars. Zoe, her 4-year-old daughter, giggled in a corner, her light brown curls bouncing as she played tic-tac-toe with Monique, her mother's fierce friend. The girl's green eyes, so like William Harper's, sparkled with joy, oblivious to the storm her existence had unleashed. Felicia's heart still raced from the night's revelations. Ursula Harper's lies, exposed by Marcus Tate's damning folder, had shattered the engagement of William to Lillian Prescott. But the air now held a fragile promise, a chance to rebuild on truth. Lillian Prescott entered, her blonde hair loose, her tailored blazer sharp against the cafe's warmth. At 27, her blue eyes carried a quiet resolve, though her fingers twisted a napkin, betraying the turmoil beneath. Felicia, she said, sliding into the chair opposite, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. Thank you for meeting me. Felicia nodded, her throat tight, sensing the weight of this moment. You walked away, Lillian, she said, her tone soft but firm. That took courage. Lillian's lips trembled, a flicker of gratitude crossing her face. I had to, she replied, leaning forward, her voice dropping. When I saw those papers, your daughter, I realized I was part of a lie. Ursula used us both. Me for my money, you for her pride. I misjudged you, Felicia. I'm sorry. The apology hung raw and unguarded, and Felicia felt a pang of connection, the sting of Ursula's venom resurfacing. She painted me as a gold digger, Lillian continued, her gaze distant. You trapped William for his money and left when it got tough. I believed her. Felicia's breath caught. Ursula's lies sharper than she'd expected, not just to William, but to Lillian, ensuring her loyalty. She wanted me to feel superior, Lillian said, her voice trembling with anger. To bind me to William, I was such a fool. Felicia's hands clenched, but she forced them to relax, her voice steady despite the ache. You weren't a fool, Lillian. You were a target, like me. She used my love for William to break me and your trust to trap you. The words wove a thread between them, their shared wounds forging a fragile bond. Lillian's eyes glistened, but a spark of defiance ignited. I'm done being her pawn, she declared, her voice rising. I've launched an investigation into the charity fund she stole. My father's legacy won't be her plaything. Felicia's respect deepened, her lips curving faintly. Your father, Edward, he tried to warn you, didn't he? Lillian's face softened, a mix of pride and sorrow. He always saw through people like Ursula. I wish I'd listened sooner. I'm working with a colleague, Daniel Carter, to rebuild the charity. He's honest, different. Her voice warmed, a hint of something new, and Felicia's smile grew. Lillian was healing, carving her path. The cafe door swung open, and William Harper stepped in, a bouquet of lilies clutched in his hands, their white petals a quiet plea. His sandy hair was tousled, his green eyes heavy with regret, stirring memories of love and loss in Felicia's chest. He approached, his steps tentative, his tuxedo replaced by a simple shirt and jeans. Felicia, Lillian, he said, his voice raw, cracked with the weight of the night. I owe you both more than words. He set the lilies before Felicia, their fragrance soft but piercing. I failed you. I let her lies blind me. I missed 3 years with my daughter. Felicia's throat tightened, his sincerity clashing with the scars he'd left. You did, she said, her voice firm, unwavering. I begged you to listen, William. You chose Ursula over our love, over me, while I carried Zoe. Her words cut deep, the betrayal raw, and William flinched, his shoulders sagging. Lillian watched, her expression unreadable, then spoke, her voice steady. You failed me too, William. I thought we had love, but it was built on her schemes. I ended it because I deserve honesty, and so does Felicia. Her words mirrored Felicia's demand for truth, a shared resolve binding them. William nodded, his eyes locked on Felicia's. I'm trying, he said, his voice fragile. I want to be Zoe's father. Zoe ran over, waving a drawing, her voice bright. Mommy, look. William knelt, his smile tentative. That's beautiful, Zoe, he said, his hand hovering near her shoulder, a father learning to reach. Felicia's heart wavered, but her resolve held. Earn it, William, she said, her voice a challenge, her scars too deep for forgiveness. Monique joined them, her eyes narrowing at William but softening at Felicia's nod. She's happy, she whispered, a reminder of Felicia's strength. Lillian stood, her poise returning. I'm taking back my life, she said, her gaze shifting between Felicia and William. You should too. She squeezed Felicia's hand, a silent vow of alliance, and left, her steps lighter, her blazer catching the sun. Felicia watched Zoe return to her game, William's presence a new thread in their tapestry. The cafe's warmth wrapped around her, but Marcus's warning, more secrets loomed, lingered like a shadow. For now, the bond with Lillian, forged in shared betrayal, was a spark of hope. Zoe's laughter, her guiding light in the quiet after the storm. The Atlanta sun dipped low, casting a warm glow through the windows of Felicia Grant's apartment, where the laughter of her 6-year-old daughter, Zoe, filled the air like a melody. 2 years had passed since the Savannah engagement party imploded, exposing Ursula Harper's lies and reshaping Felicia's world. At 31, Felicia stood in her kitchen, stirring a pot of jambalaya, the scent of spices mingling with the vibrant chaos of Zoe's artwork plastering the walls. Crayon sketches of soccer games, family picnics, and a man with sandy hair Zoe now called Daddy. Felicia's ebony skin caught the light, her tight curls loose around her shoulders, her hazel eyes softer but still fierce. The scars of betrayal lingered, but a new strength bloomed, rooted in her daughter's joy and the life she'd carved from the ashes of Ursula's cruelty. Zoe burst in, waving a drawing, her light brown curls bouncing, her green eyes, William Harper's eyes, sparkling. Mommy, look, it's us at the park with Daddy. Felicia knelt, her heart swelling, and hugged her daughter tightly. That's beautiful, baby, she said, her voice warm, though the mention of William stirred a familiar ache. Zoe scampered off, clutching a soccer ball, her voice trailing. When's Daddy coming? Felicia's smile softened. Soon, sweetheart. He's got a surprise. The girl cheered, her energy a beacon, but Felicia's thoughts drifted to William, his persistent efforts, and the boundary she'd set. She'd never forgive his weakness, his choice to believe Ursula's lies over her love, abandoning her while pregnant with Zoe. Yet for her daughter's sake, she allowed him a role, carefully guarded. Felicia's legal clinic, once a modest storefront, now thrived, its walls echoing with the voices of single mothers, evicted families, and dreamers she championed. A generous grant from Lillian Prescott had expanded its reach, a testament to their shared resilience forged in the crucible of Ursula's betrayal. Lillian's gift was more than money. It was a bridge between two women who'd been pawns in the same cruel game. Ursula Harper's name, once a specter, now carried only echoes of disgrace. Her schemes, framing Felicia, manipulating Lillian's engagement, siphoning charity funds, had unraveled under legal scrutiny. Savannah's elite had shunned her, their invitations drying up, their whispers branding her a pariah. She'd fled to a coastal town, her empire reduced to a rented cottage and bitter regrets. Felicia felt no joy in her downfall, only relief, a clean slate free of Ursula's shadow. William had seized that slate, uprooting his life from Savannah's polished offices to Atlanta's gritty nonprofit scene. He worked at a community center, mentoring kids not unlike those Felicia fought for, and coached Zoe's soccer team, his cheers mingling with hers on muddy fields. He read her bedtime stories, stumbling over fairy tale names to her delight, each visit a step toward earning her trust. Felicia watched from a distance, her heart guarded by scars too deep to erase. She'd told him 2 years ago in that Savannah cafe, "Zoe's your daughter, but I'm done." William respected her boundary, his devotion to Zoe a quiet atonement, but his green eyes, heavy with regret, still sought her forgiveness, a hope she couldn't grant. A photo on the fridge from their clinic days 6 years ago caught her eye. Her and William laughing under fluorescent lights. He'd kept it, he'd said, even when he believed her a traitor. The memory stirred warmth, but trust was a bridge she wouldn't cross. Zoe's voice broke her reverie, bright and insistent. "Mommy, can Lillian come to my game?" Felicia smiled, the name a bright thread in her days. "She's got a big day coming, baby, but I'll ask." Lillian's emails were a lifeline. Her updates on Prescott logistics and the restored charity funds a testament to her strength. She'd grown close to Daniel Carter, a lawyer whose integrity grounded her. Their romance hinted at in tales of dinners by the river and walks through marshes. Felicia cherished their friendship, born of shared scars, a gift she hadn't expected from the wreckage of that engagement party. Lillian's courage, walking away from Ursula's lies, mirrored Felicia's own, and their bond was a lighthouse in the storm. Monique breezed in, her grin wide, her nurse's scrubs swapped for jeans. "Girl, Zoe's wild today. William better bring his A-game." Felicia laughed, the sound freer than it had been in years. "He's learning," she said, her eyes warm. Monique nudged her, her voice teasing but gentle. "And you? You ever gonna let him close her?" Felicia's smile faltered, her heart wrestling with hope and fear. "He's Zoe's father, not my future," she murmured, and Monique squeezed her hand, understanding. The doorbell rang, and Zoe raced to answer, her shouts of, "Daddy!" filling the apartment. William stepped in, his nonprofit polo rumpled, a soccer ball under one arm, his green eyes lighting up at Zoe's tackle hug. "Who's ready for practice?" he called, and Zoe squealed, tugging his hand. He caught Felicia's gaze, his smile tentative, a silent plea she acknowledged but didn't return. As they left for the park, Felicia lingered at the door, watching William hoist Zoe onto his shoulders, her giggles echoing. Her heart ached with possibility, tempered by caution. The clinic, Zoe's laughter, Lillian's friendship, these were her world now, rebuilt on truth. Marcus Tate's final warning, "There's more," had yielded no new secrets, Ursula's lies fully exposed. Yet Felicia felt a new chapter dawning, one where Zoe's joy was her guide. She closed the door, the photo on the fridge catching her eye. William was trying, but her heart belonged to Zoe, to herself, to the path she'd forged alone. The horizon glowed with promise, and Felicia stood ready, her strength a crown she'd earned. The Charleston coastline shimmered under a June sun, its golden rays dancing on waves that whispered renewal through the magnolia-scented air. Felicia Grant, now 31, stood amidst the low-country estate's wildflower-draped splendor, her coral dress flowing like a soft tide against her ebony skin. Tiny pearls gleamed in her loose curls, a quiet crown for a woman who'd transformed pain into power. Beside her, Zoe, 6 years old, fidgeted in a navy dress, her light brown curls barely tamed as a flower girl for Lillian Prescott's wedding to Daniel Carter. Zoe's green eyes, inherited from her father, William Harper, sparkled with excitement, her small hands clutching a basket of rose petals. Felicia's hazel eyes softened, the past 2 years healing woven into this moment of joy, a stark contrast to the Savannah engagement party that had once shattered her world. Today, she stood not as a scorned ex-wife, but as a pillar of resilience, here to celebrate a friend's love. The estate buzzed with a warm, intimate crowd, far removed from Savannah's cold elite. Wildflowers and lanterns adorned the grounds, their glow reflecting the sincerity of the day. Lillian's lace gown caught the breeze as she walked the aisle, her blonde hair glowing, her blue eyes radiant for Daniel, whose brown skin and gentle gaze shone with adoration. Their love, born in quiet moments studying legal reforms in coastal marshes, was a balm after Ursula Harper's betrayal. Felicia watched Lillian's vows, promising to nurture Daniel's dreams, and felt a pang of kinship. 2 years ago, they'd been strangers, bound by Ursula's lies. Lillian targeted for her $500 million Prescott logistics fortune, Felicia for her love. Now their friendship was a lighthouse, guiding them through shared scars. Lillian had insisted that Felicia and Zoe share this day. "You gave me courage," she'd written, and Felicia had come, her daughter, her pride, her heart open to celebration. Zoe tugged her dress, her whisper loud enough to draw chuckles from nearby guests. "Mommy, is this like your wedding with Daddy?" Felicia's cheeks warmed, her eyes flickering with a bittersweet memory of vows long broken. "Not quite, baby," she murmured, squeezing Zoe's hand, her resolve steady. William was in Atlanta, coaching Zoe's soccer team, a father to their daughter, but no longer a part of Felicia's heart. She'd drawn a line 2 years ago, unable to forgive his failure to trust her love, and he'd honored it, his devotion to Zoe unwavering. At the reception, under a canopy of stars, the soulful band filled the air with rhythm, and Felicia stood near the dance floor, watching Monique spin Zoe in giggling circles, the girl's navy dress flaring. Lillian found her, her lace gown shimmering, her eyes thick with emotion. "Felicia," she said, her voice trembling, "I wouldn't be here without you." She reached for Felicia's hand, her touch warm. "You stood fearless with Zoe that night, showing me what strength looks like." Felicia's heart clenched, her voice soft but steady. "And you showed me courage, Lillian, walking away from Ursula's lies." They hugged, a fierce embrace that sealed their bond, two women who'd reclaimed their truths from the ashes of betrayal. Daniel joined them, his linen suit creased from dancing, his smile warm. "You're family now," he said, his deep voice earnest. "Thank you for being here." Zoe ran up, petals stuck in her curls, tugging on Daniel's hand. "Dance with me," she demanded, and he laughed, scooping her into a twirl, her squeals echoing over the music. Felicia watched, her heart full. Zoe, once a shadow of a broken past, now glowed in a community of love. The crowd's laughter mingled with the band's soulful notes, and Felicia felt a weight lift, the pain of 3 years ago fading under the stars. Lillian's friendship, Zoe's joy, these were her anchors, proof that truth could build as fiercely as lies could destroy. A guest, an older woman in sapphire silk, approached, her eyes kind. "Your daughter's a blessing," she said, nodding toward Zoe, now chasing fireflies with other children. "You've raised her strong." Felicia smiled, her voice quiet but proud. "She's my everything." The woman's words echoed the community she'd built in Atlanta, her clinic, her allies, her daughter's laughter. Lillian raised a glass nearby, her voice carrying over the crowd. "To love, to truth, to us." The guests cheered, and Felicia lifted her glass, her eyes shining, the toast a celebration of their shared victory. She caught Lillian's gaze, her friend beaming beside Daniel, and felt a surge of gratitude for this moment, this bond. Monique sidled up, her grin mischievous. "Girls, Zoe's stealing the show. You good?" Felicia laughed, the sound free and light. "Better than good," she said, her eyes tracing Zoe's joyful dance. The night unfolded in a tapestry of warmth, guests swaying to the music, children laughing, Lillian and Daniel stealing a quiet kiss. Felicia stood at the heart of it, her coral dress catching the lantern light, her pearls a subtle crown. Ursula's shadow was gone, her disgrace a distant echo. Lillian's grant had lifted Felicia's clinic, her friendship had lifted her spirit, and Zoe's laughter was her North Star. This wedding, unlike the one that broke her, was a testament to healing, and Felicia was woven into its heart. As the band played a slow melody, Zoe ran to Felicia, her face flushed. "Mommy, dance with me." Felicia scooped her up, swaying under the stars, her daughter's giggles a promise of tomorrow. The Charleston night wrapped them in its embrace, the horizon glowing with possibility. Felicia's heart danced, not with the reckless hope of youth, but with the steady strength of a woman who'd rebuilt her world. She was here for Lillian, for Zoe, for herself, a celebration of truth that no lie could dim. Dear listeners, what a journey Felicia's courage has woven. From betrayal's ashes to a celebration of truth, her story burns bright with resilience. What moved you most? Felicia's strength, Lillian's defiance, or Zoe's radiant joy? Drop a comment below. Where are you listening from, and what's your takeaway? Your hearts fuel these tales, so hit that subscribe button to catch our next story and share this one to keep the fire alive. Thank you for joining us for feeling every heartbeat of this saga. Until next time, stay bold, stay true, and we'll meet again to uncover more stories that spark the soul. Keep shining.